They want to put ads in your game. Is that a problem? Let's talk about it. So I was just watching this YouTube video by Bellular News, and he was saying that investors wanted to put ads into the games, and EA had said, okay, we're gonna build this system that allows us to display ads in the game. So I guess in real life, that's quite normal, right? You drive past a billboard, that's an ad. You go to a basketball game, there's an ad on the screen. You watch an Evo tournament, there's ads in between all the matches. We're used to seeing ads, but ads in games, why does that feel a little bit different? So an important part of the video is that traditionally, the money comes from the consumers, right? We buy the games, our money is spent on the game, so the company gets some money. And then we buy some DLC, company gets a bit more money. And especially games that are free to play, it's usually these whales, the people who are, smaller in number, but they're spending most of the money. And that's keeping these companies afloat. I say keeping them afloat, keeping them rich. But obviously with money in mind, investors see this as well, actually that's 96% of the population not spending money on the game. We should just get money from the rich people who own, products that they want to sell. Now in the movie industry, this is obviously something that happens already all the time, but there's something about video games that felt like the games I play, they're not filled with ads. I have RPGs where my characters go to fantasy lands, or they live in a version of the world that's very different to the version of our world. They don't buy things like Coca-Cola and Starbucks, they buy things like grog, or what do they use in Final Fantasy? Elixirs and potions and that sort of thing. So in the video game world, our first concern is, in a world where Ryu and Ken are throwing fireballs at each other, is it natural for them to also be holding a Coca-Cola can? Actually, we've already experienced a little bit of this, because in the world of Street Fighter, we have these collaborations with Red Bull, where they have these Red Bull costumes, and every single person had these tracksuits with, the Red Bull branding on it. But Street Fighter is actually not the most fantastical example. That's actually based on Earth. Original characters, they came from various different countries on Earth. But once you take it to something like Final Fantasy, if you saw Cloud Strife hand a Coca-Cola over to Tifa, it'd be what's going on? Why are they drinking Coke? Is that a company that's prevalent in Midgar? How strong are they compared to Shinra? Right? It's we're starting to ask these questions. But actually the advertising could be handled quite tastefully, right? Especially a company like EA. They're a sports company, so it's actually quite normal to see ads for, soft drinks and energy drinks showing up on the banners. The point that I feel wasn't quite made in the Bellular News video is actually, once you bring an advertiser into the product for product placement, now you have to keep the advertisers happy. Where before it was you're the developer and you have to keep your publisher happy. That's already a task in itself. Now, if you also had the branding of some cafe, or a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or something, let's say that those companies were operating in certain countries where they didn't want you to criticize that country. To put it really simply, some product companies don't want to be associated with certain ideas, especially if you're in a video game where all your characters are freedom fighters and they're fighting against the man and taking down big corporations. Suddenly a big corporation is going to be do I really want to advertise in this game? So at that point, the publisher has to make a decision. We include the advertiser in our game and we receive their money, but we don't criticize, the system. Or we keep criticizing the system, Shinra goes down, Cloud Strife wins, and we just don't get money from that advertiser. You can see the conundrum that they're in now. But you can see it goes the other way as well. At the moment, Red Bull still has a very good reputation, so having Red Bull, present in a Street Fighter game, that's not being a problem. But sometimes companies, cafes, fast food joints, they end up getting boycotted for whatever reason. And then once they're associated with the video game, people are left in this awkward position. It's well, do I still support this video game because they're receiving money from these companies that I don't like? The more advertisers and more companies that you put into the game, the more associations that you create, which could affect the game. And especially since I'm interested in fighting games, it's already hard enough without having associations with big corporations and companies. It's already hard enough to keep people playing the game, just because it takes so much practice and focus and dedication to get good at fighting games, especially if it's in a very small player base. It just becomes even more obvious if you're not one of the stronger players. So the video game could go in a story direction that the advertiser doesn't like, and the advertiser in real life could go in a direction that affects the game and actually reduces the player base because people don't want to support it anymore. You are seeing this happen all the time anyway, so we know that this is already a thing. But I have one more area where I think it's a little bit concerning if, we keep going down this road of getting most of the money for the game to come from advertisers. And it's this word that people introduced me to more recently, which is Technofeudalism. It's not really that they know what kind of stuff you like and they serve you an ad because they want to sell you something that you already like. It's the opposite. They're serving ads to seed the idea that this is what you want. And before you know it, you think that you want it, and you think that happened organically, but it didn't. Like, it was planted in your mind from the advertiser who put their product placement into that game. Let's say that one energy drink company wasn't happy that most people in the fighting game community drink this one energy drink. So a competing company could come in and suggest to all the main fighting games. They could go to Tekken 8, they could go to Street Fighter 6, they could go to Guilty Gear Strive, they could go to Virtua Fighter, and they could say, all 4 of you games, we want to put our energy drink advertising into all 4 of your games. All of the deals are done separately, none of the publishers are any the wiser, and then suddenly, everyone who plays fighting games is like, there's this one energy drink that just shows up in every single fighting game. It's like, it must be the most popular. Why does the FGC really like this one energy drink? It's like, actually, they don't. It's like they were told to like it by this company who had done coordinated marketing to make sure that every fighting game was placing their product into their game. Again, when we say advertising, it doesn't sound that bad. It's like, well, I could just ignore the ad and not buy it. But it's not just about products, is it? In-game advertising and product placement doesn't just go for selling products, it also goes for selling ideas. Political ideas. I watch 10 seconds of a single video, and once it's in my history feed, YouTube thinks that I'm a prime candidate to be sold a certain political kind of idea. And the only thing I can do is go through my history and find any video that I think might have led YouTube to believe that I'm interested in that political idea, and I have to delete it. Otherwise, it'll just keep suggesting more of that stuff to me. That being said, I'm not going to say it's all bad, because at the end of the day, in-game advertising does mean that more money would come from rich companies into the game that I want, which means that less money has to come from me, and probably for something like a niche fighting game where there was just never going to be enough people to actually buy the game to fund the development of the sequel, maybe it's a good thing because now the game will actually exist at all. And I guess one smaller thing is that if there's less focus on buying objects and materials in a game that could make it easier to win, so pay to win mechanics, if enough money is coming from these advertisers, maybe it would reduce the pay-to-win mechanics, or it would reduce the need to rely on pay-to-win mechanics. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to say. I was just watching an interesting video on YouTube, and I thought, in-game advertising does sound scary at first, but there are some benefits to it. But the real problem is that the more people you involve in the creation of something, the more people you have to please. And that does massively actually constrict the creative freedom you have with regards to where the story goes, what kind of themes you touch upon, and what the advertisers maybe they might even request that you put certain things into your product. It's not that there's no escape from it, it's just that I think when advertising does enter the equation, we have to keep a close eye on it so it doesn't get out of hand. Or at least once we know that it's going to get out of hand, if we're a little conscious of it, then we can kind of reduce the effects that it has on us, subconsciously. But what do you think? Are in-game ads actually not that bad? Or do you think they're absolutely the worst possible thing that could happen to your favorite video game franchise? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for today. I've been NihongoGamer. I'll see you real soon.